Hey, stick around to see how I've harmonised this wild middle 8 and hear the full 8 bars at the end. Well, my music buddy Ethan has written this funky melody for me to demonstrate how I'd harmonise a Sax Soli section. If you're a music nerd like me and into Ligeti, Gil Evans and Schoenberg, then you're gonna love his awesome channel. The link is below. Now I'm going to be going through these techniques quite quickly, so if you're not used to the jazz language, I suggest doing some study on Sax Solis first and then come on back. The rules for writing a Soli are similar to the rules I've presented in other videos for harmonizing like Gil Evans. There are only a few things that are different. As is common with Sax Solis, the baritone or tenor sax often doubles the melody an octave below, meaning there is 4-part harmony. Gil does this too, but will sometimes break away from doubling the melody at important points or target chords to produce a better bass line or a richer 5-part harmony. He mostly uses closed and drop 2 voicings, except for some of those important points where he may use any type of voicing, including open voicings. Otherwise, it's fairly traditional. It's good that Ethan's kooky bebop melody has lots of difficult moments, which gives us lots of opportunity to discuss solutions. For this example, we've just used the chords of a middle 8 section, 3-7, 6-7, 2-7, and a 5-7. After this opening arpeggio, it's difficult to know where to place another A7 chord. I've selected the C as the following phrase leads to the D7. This is part of my target chord strategy that I've seen Gil employ. Even though the C isn't in the chord of A7, I'm still happy to use an A7 chord to harmonise it, as it makes the most sense in terms of the melody and rhythm. In music school, I would have been told to harmonise that as a chromatic passing note, but not in the method that I've discovered through studying Gil. For this arpeggio, I'll just double the melody an octave below with a baritone sax. Then as I approach the target chord, I'll divert off into the A7. The chord beforehand could act as a stepping stone, so I'll place an E7 there. I'll fill in some inner parts now. All of these will just be A7 arpeggios. I'll complete the target chord, and that should make for a nice opening. I'll put in an E7 here, and for this chromatic step, I think I'll just move upwards chromatically. For the end of this phrase going into the D7, I'll place my target chords. This one will be a target chord, as will the E flat. E flat diminishes the top half of a D7 flat 9 anyway, so I'll place that chord there already, and these notes can just approach chromatically. For this target chord, I'll use an inversion as I want to use the D in the next bar. I'll place a drop 2 D9 chord here, and notice that there aren't any doubles, and that I've gone to 5-part harmony. I've used 4-part harmony primarily with the baritone doubling the melody an octave below, and 5-part when I've wanted to bring a more vibrant harmony to important points. For this chord in between, I'll try a diminished chord again. Whoops, there is a repeated note. I'll adjust it, and that makes an A flat minor 7 flat 5 chord, which should sound good. I've forgotten this little chromatic step up. I'll just take all these notes and approach them chromatically. And that's the first 3 bars done. The next 2 bars are really challenging. I'll put in the most obvious target chords first, these 2 G7 flat 9s. So here we have a melody that is almost all from the altered scale. It would be difficult to harmonise these all with the notes of D7. On a passage like this, it can be advantageous to detach the bass line from the same rhythm and compose a counterpoint. I'm going to write this bass line stepping up towards the G7. This plays off nicely against the rhythm and direction of the descending bebop melody. Then I think it's a good idea to harmonise this melody with notes from G minor, thinking of it as the 1 of the D7. Then on the passing notes, I can use diminished chords to act as the top part of the D7 flat 9. I think that is a good result from a tricky melody. I love how diminished often offer the best voice leading. It's sort of an old school trick, but it works really well. On this first bar of G7, I didn't want to just repeat the G7 as it was, so I tried moving various parts for interest. The most interesting one turned out to be to move the baritone up chromatically until it happened upon the melody note down an octave. This turned out to be a nice coincidence. On the scale down, I used pitches from G7 flat 9 on the chord tones and diminished chords on the passing notes. I'm on 4-part harmony here, with the baritone playing the melody an octave below. It's all aiming toward beat 1 and 2 and in the following bar, my next target chord. For the C, I used an inversion so I could have a nice C dominant chord of some sort. The chord happens to be a drop 2, but I didn't think of that way when I wrote it. For the chord beforehand, I just used a functional D flat 9 chord to approach it. The last phrase is tricky, and I've primarily used 5-part harmony because the bass line becomes more interesting utilizing contrary motion. First I worked on the C7 sharp 9. I put its 2 chord before it, and like before, noticing this chromatic run upwards, I just did the same with the harmony. I put an E in the bass here, noticing a chance to reinforce C7. I also think it makes for a nice bass line. I want the last chord to be an F, so I'll put that in, and I'll step down chromatically to that chord. Now for the inner parts, I'll put in the C7 over E. I notice I've got a repeat here, so I could change one of these. I'll try change this one. Flatten the 5th. These last 3 chords were tricky. The melody isn't very typical here. I'll put in my F6 9 first. I'll try a F major 7 over G. And what to do now? I'll approach these notes chromatically. One going down to the 6th and the others rising. There, it's a G sharp minor 7 over F sharp. The chromatic descending line at the end here helps to return this funky passage back to F major. And it's finished. A fair amount of it is traditional, with the baritone doubling the melody down an octave. Some of the chord choices aren't traditional, but choosing where to put your target chords is going to help make the thing stick together and sound really interesting. Let me know what you think, and if you'd like a PDF with full analysis, the link is in the description. Don't forget to check out Ethan's channel, it's really great.